What is up, everybody? Josh Tapp here again, and welcome back to the Lucky Titan podcast. And today we are here with Robert Glazer. I'm so excited to have him here. You know, as the CEO and founder of Acceleration Partners, I'm very excited to have him in here to talk about partner marketing. You know, most of you who follow our content, we talk pretty heavily about partner marketing as a scaling strategy. You might hear it called 50 different things, right? Influencer marketing, partner marketing. We call it like JV marketing. There's so many different ways to call it. It's all the same thing. So I'm excited to have Robert in here to talk about that with us here today. So Robert, say what's up to everybody. We'll hop in, man.
Hey, Josh. Hey, everyone. Thank you for having me today.
That'll be exciting. So Robert, I want to ask you first off, what is your take on partner marketing for a company who has just passed $1 million and plateaued?
I think, look, they're probably already doing some sort of, there's a difference between, let's say, partner marketing and a partner marketing program, right? So building a scalable program. They're probably already doing some partner marketing. Like think of just even like a plumber who says to the electrician, hey, if you send me a lead and when they convert, like I'll pay you, 10% of that lead. Like that's partner marketing. People do that, but it'd be very different if the guy said, look, just sign up on the site, send people through your link and you'll get paid automatically, right? That's a partner marketing program. So I think everyone can have partner marketing. There's definitely some tech, affiliate marketing. Otherwise you can start to use it around $1 million in sales, but it's probably, if that's $1 million in online sales, it works best when there's an online conversion because that's where the automation really helps, right? The problem example with a plumber is you got to manually say, I got a customer. With online tracking, if there was a conversion by how you set up the pixel and you could pay out on that. So I think in millions we could start thinking about it. You're just going to need probably a shared resource or just do it like carefully and controlled. You're not going to have obviously the budget to hire like an agency or someone to come in and manage the program at that point.
Yeah. And I love how you differentiated that because everybody does the different partner marketing tactics to get started.
It's business development, right?
Right.
Yeah. But what the software allows you to do, what people never understood what affiliate marketing was, it was the same as like the same analogy to sending out an email in BCC or having a, email campaign monitor or MyEmma or, one of these, why can't I think of what's the really big one that everyone knows the name of, the email system,
like HubSpot,
Constant Contact, right? That's the difference between, you could have always sent out emails, but then Constant Contact becomes a scalable tool to segment and track and all that stuff. That's what the technology has done to sort of affiliate and partner marketing.
Yeah, I love that. One of the things that we found with a lot of the people who've hit that $1 million mark is that you really at that point you've figured out your message, who you're serving and how you're serving them, and that really establishes you well for the next step, which is partner marketing. Would you agree?
Yeah, you also need to know your pricing. Like the reason why we don't work with a lot of people when they're launching is because you're asking people to put something on their shelf, take a risk. If you haven't proven out the concept, then you don't want to be asking other people to do that. So yeah, when you have your messaging, when you understand your target customer, when you have your pricing right, then you're in a position to go to partners and say, this is what I need and this is what I know will convert. And by the way, you also understand your LTV. So you could say, hey, this any customer is worth, $500 a year to me. Like I'm willing to pay you $100 for that customer. If you don't have any of that data, it's very hard to coach other people to sell your product or service.
Yeah, 100%. I think one of the big problems that people have is that when they try to bring on partners, they just say, okay, promote me. And the reality is you have to treat them like they're 2 years old if you want them to promote you. To say, okay, step one.
You got to just give them all this. You got to they are not a customer, right? They're a distribution channel. So you need to give them, hey, it's our biggest sale of the year. That is not a partner message. Like, hey, just so you know, our biggest sale of the year is coming up. This is when we have our highest conversions. Here's banners you can use. Here's messaging you can use. Here are the top 5 products that are going to be on sale this week. Like that's a partner communication that they can use to then go to their end customers.
Yeah, I love that. So what does a partnership campaign look like for you guys? Like how you build them out? Because you're talking about the difference between, finding 1 or 2 partners here or there, but like actually using it as a core marketing strategy. So how do you guys leverage that?
Yeah, if you have 100 people in your program, right, you kind of would update them like you would a customer, what's new, what's different, is there a sale, what can I promote, like what can they use to talk about you, by the way, like talk about our brand new, thing that's launching, and here's some sample copy, and here's your link, already in it, you just have to copy and paste. Like it's really about educating it and making it as easy as they can to promote something. Obviously, incentives and sales and discounts, can drive stuff, but it's better if it's tied to something like, this product is discounted this time only this year. Here's why it's a good product. That's very different than just the whole store is 10% off, every week. There's not a lot of urgency around that.
Yeah. And that's really interesting that you bring it up that way, because I mean, most of the people who are just trying to do these discounts, it kind of becomes, people get used to it, right? I think about like the Hobby Lobby model, if you're familiar with theirs, like where they have their stores half off every week. And it kind of does create urgency, but it's a reason to go into the store. My wife loves Hobby Lobby. That's why.
Like
so.
Bed Bath and Beyond. Whenever they're like, do you have the 20% off coupon? I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Like these things are like confetti. I can go around the store and I just assumed everything's 20% off always. You send them out every day. Like,
And the funniest part about that is people get so used to it that it like discounts your pricing to the point that people won't go unless you've got the deal. Like my wife, she will intentionally not buy something for a week so she can get it at 40% off, whether she can afford it or not. Right.
Yeah.
And I think
I think deals in support of content or messaging are great. Just constant deals, is just, again, it can, depending on your brand. I mean, are you a discount brand? Or are you not? Like, obviously it goes in a few different directions.
Yeah. Well, and for you guys, this is a little bit of a kind of an offshoot question, but when you're building out these partner programs, like an affiliate program, for example, how do you typically financially reward those people? Because you have kind of like the ClickFunnels model, right? Where they give you 40% lifetime commissions. And then you have other influencers where it's like, I'm going to have LeBron James come in. I'm going to pay him $1 million up front to do a 10-minute or a 2-minute commercial or something, right?
Yeah.
What do you recommend typically for people?
Definitely not the $1 million up front. I most of the things we do are outcome based. So that's a lead or a sale, and that is tracked. So it's really like, what's the economic driver for the business? And then how do you line the incentive up to that, right? If it's ongoing subscription revenue, then you're trying to get a subscribed signer. If it's, $300 order of a, clothing, but there's not a high repeat, then you're really going after sort of the order value. So it is taking the principles of customer marketing and applying it to partners. Again, what does the business need? How do I incentivize them? We're not in the world of paying like huge, we don't play pace. I mean, there's sponsorships sometime in fixed categories or a hybrid, like, oh, we're in this category and then plus performance. We're not in the world of like huge upfront payments. That's really more the traditional PR world.
Yeah. And I honestly, I personally don't love that world either, because it doesn't matter how big their name is if there's no results, right?
We're moving. This is my next book, Outcomes. Like, I think we're just moving from input marketing to where like I'm paying for an impression or a click or whatever to paying for an outcome, so that there's not a win-lose. Typically marketing's win-lose. Like the way, go back to this first email newsletter called the Daily Candy, 20 something years ago. Like someone gets in on something early, it provides an awesome ROI. Everyone piles onto that thing. The price goes up 10x. And now it's not about like, if you were one of the early advertisers in Daily Candy, it was great for your business. If you're one of the latest ones, you were probably losing a ton of money, right? It wasn't that Daily Candy is good or bad. It's very different whether it was $10,000 a CPM or whether it was $100 a CPM. But if you go to an outcome orientation, you don't have to play around with this win-lose. If you use anything but the outcome, someone's winning and someone's losing, right? Someone's paying a little too much or not enough, and then the market will reach equilibrium eventually through supply and demand.
So yeah, I'm really glad you mentioned that model, because for us, I mean, just putting it in the podcaster space, everybody is so excited about getting onto podcasts, right? But what we've seen, even being guests on other podcasts, is that it's a brand exposure thing. But the way we've structured our podcast is we take the interview and we turn it into a summit that allows us to actually track how many people are coming through. And It becomes like an ROI based activity at that point. So there's financial reward for our guests as well, but it presents an opportunity for us to actually track the numbers instead of focusing so heavily on like, well, it's just a brand activity for both of us. Because like you said, it's
or
one
podcast
person wins or
advertising.
loses.
Someone could say, look, podcast is awesome. You should advertise on podcast. For $200 an episode, it may have a great return. For $2,500, it may have a negative return, right? It's not really an absolute. Tim Ferriss is the machine on this. Like, he gets a lot of fixed sponsorships, but you notice there is always a go to whatever the thing is /Tim. They are clearly, measuring like the volume that, when they're deciding to pay those big numbers, they're saying, look, we got 400 clients when he ran that podcast. So I think he likes the measurement and they like the measurement. And I think you're going to see just this performance model coming to more and more channels.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's so much to be said for tracking the numbers, and people are building these campaigns. And I think it's cool because PR and marketing are starting to kind of merge in that sense.
Yeah.
Because before it was like, well, we either do PR or we do marketing, and we've crossed that line into a mix of both.
Well, the other big driver in that, think about like, how I always say John Wanamaker said 100 years ago, 50% of my marketing works. I just don't know which 50%. Like 100 years ago, that was like, okay, now it really shouldn't be that way. You've got a huge push in D2C companies, right? So they're going direct to customer. They're not selling through wholesale. You sell through wholesalers, you do some TV advertising, and you say, oh, the wholesalers seem to be buying more since we ran the TV advertising. And you make a sort of correlated argument that must have to do with but you're still kind of just making that input investment and you're associating it loosely with an outcome. Versus in D2C, you can get very specific. This person came from X or Y or Z or multiple channels. And once you know that, I think you really want to, most people translate it into outcomes, but I just would prefer to pay for outcomes from the beginning.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Honestly, we won't do any campaign. We have
Yeah.
people hit us up all the time. Hey, let's do Facebook ads or these sort of things. And it's a fixed rate. And I'm like, I'll pay you a percentage, which will make you more money if you're good.
Yeah.
And we've seen big spikes in what we sell because of that. So I love that you're on that same bandwagon. It validates for me what we're doing.
Like let's say you want to guess, right? And you said, look, I will pay, you said, look, a good guest from me is worth like $500, right? And you figure out your funnel. So for every 10 guests that apply, one is good. So you could either say, look, I'll pay you $500 for a converted guest, or I'll pay you $50 for a qualified, lead, and then watch the lead quality carefully. I always think it's better to go down to the bigger number that's actually the outcome. But let's just say it's too hard it's hard for you to push back and say qualified get. You just look and you say, look, that partner's been sending me good leads and $50, each. So you just pick the point that you want to incentivize.
Yeah, I love that. And I mean, in the podcast sense, I love that you mentioned it that way, because a lot of the people here who are running podcasts, I think that's the number one problem that people are having in our space, because they're like, okay, I just need to get to where I can have sponsors because I did have listenership. But what you're talking about is saying, okay, how can I, if a good guest comes on, they promote us, and then it runs people through our funnels, how much money am I making per guest that comes on based off of their audience size? It becomes very trackable.
You're also creating, in my example, look, it's not that easy to do, but you're saying, look, instead of me having to build a guest process, I'm taking my economics to the world, to all these free agents, and saying, if you know how to get me guests and I have a way to do that, I'm going to pay you for that. It's almost like marketplace. It's like an Uber or Airbnb where you don't own the asset, but instead of a marketing team, you could be paying a whole bunch of different people to be working on your business as free agents.
That is brilliant. I love that. I might actually have to steal that. So I want to ask you this. We're going to kind of transition the conversation a little bit here, because I want to talk about your specific business model and how you've been growing, because it really intrigued me when we first talked in the pre-interview. The target customer for you is actually more of an enterprise level business, Fortune 500, Inc. 500 type company. And can you talk us through a little bit of the why and why you decided to transition and work with that type of customer?
Yeah, we like the challenge. Look, I think most businesses try to move up the funnel, right? You either can have a high volume of low number of accounts or a lower volume of high value accounts. But one of the things we realized is we really want to be working with marketing departments who have budgets to spend and who have a mandate. I think a lot of times CEOs are very difficult to work with. They have changing objectives. That's what makes them good. They have new ideas. They want to do something, they want to turn it off. And we've just found, or they look at this like spend as a necessary evil, not like a budget that's to be spent. So from a service provider standpoint, you don't want to be competing against that man or woman's, vacation fund in order to be doing this marketing. So look, people have very different models of success with different models. Ours is a high touch, high resource enterprise service model. It's not a high number of count, low cost resource model, and it's hard for many businesses to be both.
And I would agree. What's really interesting is to watch. A lot of people are scared to reach out to these higher level people because there's more of a risk factor, they feel like. But what's really interesting, because if you lose one of these big clients, you're out a lot of money, and all of a sudden you can't pay people. But the reality is most of these larger companies, you can be locking them into multiple year contracts, even in some cases, much higher. They're willing to spend the money. They're able to spend the money. And they're like, as long as you can provide
they have money, right? They have money to spend, right? There is a budget. It's not you saying, hey, I need extra money from you to do this. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
We all know how that is, being the entrepreneur, right? It's like, yeah, I mean, I'm willing to spend money, but when somebody throws a 6-figure contract at me, I'm like, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
You're debating in your head, like, do I want the new truck or do I want this? Right. And I think that's the problem that selling to that type of entrepreneur, a higher ticket product to that type of entrepreneur is. So for you guys, how have you found these high level clients? I mean, getting in the door with companies like this is not, I mean, it's not simple, right? So how have you guys been getting in the door and selling these high ticket companies?
We run the barbell approach, I think, which is not a lot of sales. It's good thought leadership and excellent delivery, right? So we write a lot of content, things that like lead the industry. I wrote a book on the industry and just kind of are seen as leaders. And we have really happy clients who trial other people. And so those things drive people to us that our sales team converts. They are not out there knocking on doors and telling people stuff. To me, I'd much rather have that than like 15 BDRs knocking down people's doors all day long because convincing them that they want to buy something.
Yeah, and I love that approach. What's been really intriguing to me, because we have kind of taken the other approach, right? Our goal is to reach out to these companies, find ways to get in the door with them, and then the sales process happens. And so it's really kind of fun to watch the other side of it, where you guys have, it's all about building the content and becoming the thought leader, right? So what's kind of your process around gaining that thought leadership? I mean, you mentioned a book, you mentioned your content, but what does that really look like for your company?
Yeah, I think it's just, I always say, if someone asks you a question once and you answer it twice, like it should be an article, and then you can point to the article. And that also helps too, where someone says, well, what do you do? Where someone says, can we pay you on a performance basis and not any fee up front? You say, well, let me link you to this article about why, it doesn't work, why your finance team will say no when we ask to do this agreement. And then, to them, like, oh, this is a known issue. We thought of it. Like, I always sort of am on my team where if they've answered it twice, like it should be a piece of content. And then by the way, that content goes out in the world and it gets shared. And then someone says, oh, you know what? I really like how that company thinks. Like I was out there looking for performance only, but it makes sense to me that like maybe I was, not, I was a little unrealistic in thinking that was a good way to go. Like we'd be honest with people, say, look, I know you want to do performance only, but what's happened is in order to do that, I need a 2-year agreement from you. If I'm going to work for 6 months for risk, and I need a tail on everything for 2 years, and you're going to take this to your legal and their finance department, and they're going to say, this is too complicated. We don't want to be wrapped into this. So that's why we're going to need some money from you to actually do work in the next 3 months.
I love that. And I love that you're using the content as a way to educate. So you're not having to have that conversation and train your sales.
Yeah, it shows that conversation is a frequent one, is one that's been had, or like, how can we grow our program, if we don't want any, discount sites? Oh, well, here's our article on growing your program without discount sites, right? you get, as I said, I think it's a great, do people ever want to know what content to write? Just take the questions that you're asked the most. That's the best place to start. Because not only be able to answer it, you'll be able to show them that you've thought of this in advance, and you'll have a really good answer that you don't have to write.
See, that is brilliant. I've never really thought of it that way. We will definitely go apply that, because we recently wrote like a fact page for our service, and there's probably 15 different questions on there, but that's literally 15 different pieces of content that we could write and become thought leaders in that space.
Right.
So
Exactly.
That's awesome. I love that. So for you guys, we're coming up to the end of the interview here already, but I want to ask you, how can people connect and learn more from your content about partnership marketing?
Yeah, they can go to accelerationpartners.com. We have a resources section, a webinar section. We have like tons of content. So a blog, we're always publishing stuff. There's plenty of free stuff up there if you want to get yourself educated on the industry.
Can you repeat that one more time just in case people miss that?
Yeah, so it's accelerationpartners.com. You are better off just Googling it than trying to punch it in, and it will come up first for you, because you'll make more typos trying to get the URL right.
I love that. It's kind of funny. You almost have to do that with a lot of brands, but
yeah.
For us, we have a product called the Pantheon, and I'm just like, just Google it, you'll find it.
Yeah.
So I want to ask you one final question though, to wrap this up.
Yeah.
So, we've covered a lot of different topics, but if you could leave one final parting piece of guidance to our audience, what would that be?
Yeah. Figure out what it is that you value most and what good outcomes for you are, and then find people who can align to those. I think that's the simplest and best strategy.